aspect of any conversation that would take place in this region. We first focused on the issues that the region needs to focus on, but now broaden it out to the wider world. And what I thought I'd do is I'd give you, Alina, a chance as Finland's foreign minister to tell us, to begin with, how do you see the challenge that Finland has in communicating the security situation in Europe, particularly the Russian invasion of Ukraine, to the world? What have you found when you travel around the world, when you talk to your counterparts? Are you able to make them understand why this is so important for Ukraine, why this seems existential to so many people in Europe? And when you encounter resistance, what is the nature of that resistance, and how do you handle it?
Well, I think, for Finnish foreign security policy, which more or less has been, I'm not saying exactly the same for over decades, but really much basing on the UN Charter and international law, and is so now perhaps ever than it's ever been, or more than it's ever been, then it's easy to communicate what we are basically after. And this same viewpoint on what is important at the end of the day, which is the rules-based order, that is something which resonates around the world. And I'm happy to note with all of my colleagues sitting here today is that it really brings all of our countries together as well, because we have significant respect for international law and the rules-based order, because we have territorial integrity or sovereignty of nations. If we don't recognize that as a basic right for each and every country, then basically what do we have left? Each country of ours would be in trouble, wouldn't it? So I guess that is something that is easy to communicate, not just closer here in Europe, obviously, but everywhere else as well. And that is also a principle that has a massive following even to this day. And everybody knows it, whether you say directly or no, that in the war in Europe, there is
South. Give us a sense of what the last 2 years have been like for you.
I think the position Kenya took was the right thing to do, the legal thing to do, so that we can really respect sovereignty and the territorial integrity of nations. We still maintain the same position, and we continue to urge that the parties have a peaceful and diplomatic solution to the crisis that is there. We have several countries in Africa, as you say, that could fall into the category of similar situations, because when the scramble for Africa took place, the boundaries delimitation was more about a conversation somewhere in Europe then, and there was no really clear understanding of the dynamics of those countries. So we have so many countries where different communities share common borders and common territory. So it's absolutely important that that happens. But more important is that we need to reassert the global rule of law. We cannot have a situation where we are seeing multilateralism on the retreat. It's taking a very heavy beating because of unilateral positions, where might is now beginning to be interpreted as being the correct thing. It is not necessarily the correct thing. I think internationally we must work together to restore the respect for multilateralism, because this really is where we will find more common solutions to the global challenges.
Mr. Jalichandra, when I think of Thailand, I always think you find yourself having to balance your foreign policy in a very delicate manner. You are a small country in an Asian continent of some very large countries that do not get on well with each other. When you have to approach like Russia, Ukraine, what is Thailand's position and why do you arrive at it?
Thank you. I'm very honored to be here, and on this to answer your question. First I would like to start to point out by this year marks the 150th establishment of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Thailand, and more than 150 years or so, the foreign policy is always our tool of survival, and we try to balance from since then to nowadays. We do, if we can, we do not like to make enemies, we like to make friends. And now we'll have this conflict in Ukraine very much affect Thailand as well. You know, the food price goes up, energy price goes up, and of course we were forcing to choose sides. I was represent my country in Birkenstock, Switzerland, for the Summit for Peace in Ukraine, to show that Thailand stands with the rest of the world on the international law and the United Nations and rule-based society in the world, to be part of the world. But at the same time, Thailand joined the same approach as India, which during that summit we did not sign the statement by the outcome of the summit, which few countries, including India and Thailand, because we view that it did not represent all the party concerned, which is, in this case, is Russia. And from my experience, I would just add that I happen to be in other OECD meeting as well, and from my view, unfortunately, maybe 80% of the time of the meeting was used by attacking Russia, which understandably, but it's kind of unfortunate for us that very time was given for talking about cooperation at all. So all you see there during the meeting, but no time for cooperation among states. So this is my reaction to you.
So give us a little bit more of a sense of the perspective you have, because I think it's an important perspective shared by many other countries, which seem to hold two contradictory positions. You seem to say You condemn the violation of sovereignty. You respect international borders and don't believe they should be changed by force. But then you are unwilling to condemn in the specifics Russia for its aggression of borders. What sense does it make to have a theoretical position about this when the practical reality that you are dealing with, which the world is confronting, is Russia's invasion of Ukraine? Why are you not willing to, in the specific case, endorse that resolution?
As I mentioned, I mean, we go along most vote in United Nations for Ukraine, of course, and the adherence of the international law and the United Nations Charter. But at that summit, I already mentioned that we feel the same way as India, that it was not proportionate represented. So that was our position back then. But still now, we are still with the rest of majority of the world that support Ukraine, and we also, given that we are a small country, we still support humanitarian assistance to Ukraine as well, and other cooperation we have with our Ukraine through our Ukrainian embassy in Bangkok, and we hope that after the post-conflict, we can contribute more, whether it will be demining or improving the soil from the result of the war, which Thailand has expertise, and we are willing to work with all countries in that endeavor.
Let me ask the minister from Costa Rica, how do you view this conflict? Costa Rica has always been a country that is famously for peace and for the rule of law. You don't have a national army. When you look at a conflict like this, one big country invading a small country, what is your attitude and outlook?
Costa Rica is a small country in Central America with 5.2 million inhabitants and 52,000 square kilometers that abolished its army back in 1949. We do not have a military budget, zero expenditure in arms, just a police force taking care of the organization of the society. Very early, it was in April, even in March, before my president taking over office, he took over in May 22, he condemned clearly the unilateral Russian aggression against Ukraine. And we have aligned our foreign policy in that conflict very much to European standards, are supporting Ukraine in its struggle. We were even brought before our constitutional court because of those statements, since Costa Rica had declared back in '84 a perpetual demilitarized neutrality. But at the court level, we achieved to distinguish between military neutrality and political neutrality. And at the end, the point of view of my ministry won, in the sense that we were free within the framework of the UN Charter to condemn such an aggression, although an aggressor has not been identified as such by the Security Council, according to Chapter 7, Section 7 of the Charter. It was obvious that it was a unilateral aggression violating territorial integrity and sovereignty of Ukraine. In that sense, all of our voting in the UN resolutions has been in that direction.
Do you believe that, I've often wondered about Costa Rica, do you think that you have the luxury of not having an army because you don't have a neighbor like Russia? Or is this a statement that you wish all countries would have no armies?
Our Constitution states that our external security is based in regional and universal collective security systems. At regional level, we have the OAS, the Organization of American States, and at universal level, we trust in the UN. We don't have Russia as a neighbor, but I have Nicaragua as a neighbor. I don't know which one is worse or more dangerous. We had a border dispute about 10 years ago with Nicaragua on the jungle on the Caribbean side. We went 4 times to the International Court of Justice in The Hague, won and settled the case in The Hague, and both countries respected the award. So a real external threat, we don't have feeling it, and we trust that multilateralism, at least in the way we understand it, at regional and universal level, would react if the country would suffer an aggression against its sovereignty or territorial integrity. Another issue is the ocean. I'm just coming from Nice. And of course, to survey the ocean of the country, which is 200 miles all across our coastlines, that's very difficult to control sovereignty over the ocean side.
And when you face challenges, you again you use the international organizations?
It's the only mean we have to react.
Mr. Bakari, the Foreign Minister of Benin, what is your country's position on Ukraine and why?
Thank you very much. I think we have some kind of unanimity here, and I will reuse the framework led by President Stubb before. We in Benin, for us, we strongly condemn the invasion of Ukraine, mainly due to the values, because it's more a question of values for us. We are a small country of 13 million inhabitants. We are a neighbor of a big country also, Nigeria. So we know that multilateralism is something very important, and the rule of law, international rule of law, is very important. And, it's mainly based on the values, even if we maintain our relationship, our diplomatic relationship with Russia. Because this is due for history, I still have an ambassador in Moscow, and we are facing the threat of Russia in our region, because Russia is supporting the military regime in Sahel region today. They are, I would say, targeting us because we are not supporting them. But I think it's, as I said, a question of values. If you belong to your values, you have to say straight in the face of your friend that what they are doing is wrong. Then I want to talk about interests. Because, look, at the end of the day, just a question of interest. We have an economy based on agriculture. We import many of our fertilizer from Ukraine, Russia. Since this war, there is a big hike on the market. This is impacting the small farmers. And this have a direct impact on our economies, our security. So that's also one of the reasons why we are pushing strongly for a peace, saying we condemn, but it's time now to sit down around the table and find a just and equal peace, because this war cannot continue. The impact on poor people, especially in Africa, is very, very important, and it's very big. So we have to acknowledge the fact that it's important to find a way to bring peace back in this region and everywhere across the globe where you have tension today.
I want to ask you about your region, because you complicated situation over the last 3 or 4 years, where there have been something like 7 coups or insurgencies. Almost all of them in some way have a Russian involvement, in that Russia has often been supporting the militia that has overthrown the regime. Can you tell us a little bit about the new scramble for Africa? As one African diplomat put it to me, and obviously no one is unbiased in these situations, he said, everywhere you look in Africa, China is looking for stability and economic power, and Russia is looking for instability and political power.
As you say, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, so I cannot talk directly, on this topic. But I think, and this is very sad, and it's a big concern for us today. We have the feeling that Russia, but also other geopolitical powers, are trying to import the geopolitical battleground we are facing elsewhere in the globe into our sub-region, and mainly in Sahel region. And this is not a good way, because actually, since 15 years now, we are fighting against terrorism. So having this type of political instability plus security instability is the big bomber in the region. Russia, I think the only one interest of Russia in Sahel today is definitely to challenge Western, global West.
Right.
I'm not sure that it's something, a long-term strategy to stay in the region. And that's also one of the concerns we have today, and I was about to talk about this. If finally we find a way to bring peace back in Ukraine, we in Africa, we are still thinking on what will happen, because all those people, private security companies operating today in this war between Russia and Ukraine with weapons, tomorrow, will they not come back to Africa and start creating instability in our region? We have to keep this, in our mind. But definitely, it's a big challenge for us today in West Africa.
Mr. Mamadani, how worried are you about what Russia is doing in the Sahel?
I mean, we have to worry. Really, any process that encourages a nation to destabilize other nations is not acceptable. We should not entertain and encourage that kind of attitude. And the challenges that the African continent is facing, a population of 1.4 billion people, 70% of them below the age of 35, is something that we need to look at very critically. And we are not going to find good solutions if we are constantly in a state of instability in the continent. Therefore, we need to condemn any form of interventions that creates instability in the region from all spheres. The African security architecture, the framework that we look at, and my colleague has touched on it, the private security undertakers, and I've used the word deliberately, that is undertakers, in every sense of the word, are actually causing havoc, because they are not accountable to anybody. It's about what resources they're able to obtain out of these interventions. Now, people who are no longer accountable to any authority, they're there for purely a commercial engagement, are extremely dangerous in terms of the stability of the nations that we talk about. So I strongly feel that the global community needs to take this extremely seriously, because we will not be able to move and face the challenges on the African continent with this continued instability. Over 500 million people in Africa are facing a challenge in one way or the other arising from these conflicts. Whether you're looking at Sudan, Somalia, South Sudan, the Sahel region, all these areas, the Central Africa, we are having a real crisis on our hands. More mouths require feeding. I think it's estimated close to 60% of that population is now facing food insecurity. Children are not going to school. There's no medical support and so forth. So we need to look at this more holistically so that we can have a rules-based society that will enable governments that are elected to come in and do their best. There's nothing that can replace democratic processes. We need to work towards that. And therefore, I just want to say that we should not encourage any form of aggression in the context of the kind that we saw in Ukraine.
But how do you deal with the instability that is so rampant now? And it's not just in the Sahel. In fact, I hardly need to tell you. I mean, if you look at Kenya, you've got you've got Tanzania on the south, you've got Uganda on the west, and after that, it's all just one civil war after the other, right? South Sudan, Ethiopia, so you're dealing with the Ethiopia-Eritrea issue, you're dealing with the South Sudan issue. Some of us look at these, and what I wonder is, why is there so much international involvement in a place like South Sudan? You've got countries from Russia to the UAE supporting various sides in the Horn of Africa. Why is that happening, and how do you put an end to it?
Well, part of the challenge we face is that it's the resources that are bound in this region. So really, when you talk of the new scramble for Africa, it's precisely that. So Africa is beginning to face a lot of proxy battles for critical minerals and other resources that are being sought for in this particular region. And I think there's a call that we need to make, that there's also need to respect African institutions. The African Union, the East African Community, the ECOWAS, you can name these economic regional blocs, because we're also seeing a process where the unilateralism is beginning to undermine the very institutions that are African. And therefore, for us to be able to resolve various political crises internally through dialogue is being undermined in many different stages. And this is prolonging the process of conflict. And as I said, it is extremely costly. Terrorism and all other forms of challenges that come with it are beginning to really take their toll on the African continent. So we need to strengthen African institutions and work with them so that they can become more effective in resolving some of the crises that we have.
Yeah. No, I don't envy your job, because I forgot Somalia, of course, also borders you. Minister Jalichandra, tell us a little bit about how you navigate the role, the independence and the security that you search for in the context of a rising China, which is the dominant geopolitical fact of the world today. How complicated is it? How difficult is it, for example? Did you face pressure from China when you came out in favor of Ukraine and condemned and voted against the invasion?
Well, I should like to point out again that Thailand always adheres to diplomacy, which is our survival tools since the colonial era, World War I, World War II, Cold Wars. And during the Cold Wars years, Thailand was very close to the United States. And at that time, we see China is more or less our enemy, because they are have subversive communism spread in our region. But that again is a force that Thailand has launched like-minded countries to form the ASEAN, or the Association of Southeast Asia, in 1967 at the height of the Cold War. And then from there, we built coalition regional grouping, and which expand to now 10 countries, 10 member countries, and we enjoy peace in the region quite. Since I think we enjoy considerable peace in Southeast Asia for more than 30 years. So after we ASEAN have managed to convince Vietnam to pull back from to end the invasion of Cambodia with the help of world community at that time, which Thailand feel, part of feel that we should take the same position as the conflict in Ukraine, because once the world did help Thailand and ASEAN for foreign invasion, so we would have responsibility to adhere the same principles as well, because at that time we used that principle. Now, again, with China nowadays, I think through ASEAN, which has been our cornerstone of our foreign policy for 60 years now, nearly 60 years now, we have launched dialogue that help decrease tension in the region. Especially we have hotspots, as you may know, in the South China Sea, as well as Korean Peninsula, as well as the Strait of Taiwan, that are all but through the Association of Southeast Asia, or ASEAN, we managed to provide platform that major powers like United States, the Russian, China can come to talk and exchange view, and especially on South China Sea. Now there has been much progress in the Code of Conduct, the COC, in the South China Sea, which we hope that this will very much decrease the tension in the area and deflect all the conflicts. Yeah.
So I thought it might be useful, Minister Tinoco, if we talk about the other great power in the world, the other elephant in the room, the United States. Costa Rica has had to live under the shadow of the United States. What do you worry about? What are your perspectives on American foreign policy right now, particularly under the Trump administration?
Let's see. Yes, we have had a long-standing good relationship with the United States of America along the history. Since 1821, when we got independent from Spain, with a few exceptions, we always had relationship with them. Before answering, I must tell you that 60% of the tourists that visit Costa Rica, 3 million in total, 60% are from the USA. 50% mainly medical devices, which make 35% of the exports, and semiconductors, with Intel having a plant there, go to the US. And 75% of the foreign direct investment in my country comes from the US. So the economies are very linked. We have a free trade agreement called CAFTA, Central American Free Trade Agreement, that DR for the Dominican Republic, with the US, according to which a free flow of goods and services was agreed upon, and the transition periods are over. So we procure to maintain those good relationships, the cut down of the international cooperation through the International Agency for Cooperation of the USAID. AID was, of course, a shock for all the programs, mainly the migration problem. We are a transit country where Venezuelans and South Americans have transited through the country up to 500,000 a year. In the year 2023, there we had two main programs from the UNHCR, Refugee Organization, and the OIM, in total 45 million a year. That was cut. That was a shock, and we had to close down all cooperation programs being financed by the USA, except the ones dealing with national issues, regional security issues, and drug trafficking. Those have been maintained. And now we're dealing with a tariff issue. We got 10% for our products. And I'm happy to inform you that we were one of the very few countries in the hemisphere being invited to negotiate in Washington the tariffs and the complaints that the USTR put down in 2 or 3 days before the tariffs were announced. We're trying to solve all these complaints and thereby perhaps achieving a zero tariff treatment with the USA.
You think 0 is a prospect? Because I thought 10 is the minimum at this
It's
point.
the minimum, but we are negotiating.
You raised the issue of ID, so I thought, one of the things that there's a lot about Mr. Mudavadi, China is replacing America with soft power, with spending money on aid, on infrastructure, things like that. What's your perspective in Africa?
Well, I think maybe for lack of a better word, we have just come from an engagement in Beijing, Changsha, where there was the midterm review of China's engagement under the FOCAC framework. And the China government made a very profound statement. They said that they have now made a decision to provide 100% tariff-free market access for goods and products originating from Africa. Now, this is a profound statement, bearing in mind that one of the key programs within the United States and Africa relationship has been the AGOA framework, which is coming to an end in September. We also can see a situation where, if I speak for Kenya, we have also negotiated an economic partnership agreement with the European Union so that we can be able to support manufacturers and producers in our country to access at more competitive levels to these markets. Now, I say that it needs to be taken seriously because as the West perhaps looks at it differently, and begins to step back, China is stepping in. So it is something that needs to be taken seriously, and it's a soft power. As you close the US aid, China is stepping in. So it is something that needs to be looked at in the context of how do we strengthen the global trade environment so that it can be a fair opportunity for everybody, no matter which continent you are in and no matter the state of your economy. These are fundamental issues that we should not run away from. Farid, I gave some thought when I saw the invitation sent from President Stubb's government, directed at President Ruto, but he told me to come here. Now, not exactly to speak his view. He gave me the latitude to be able to speak a little more freely to some of these issues. And we have a team that I put together to just look at the whole ecosystem, and I'll be pleased to hand over a write-up to the secretariat of this very important gathering so that they can look deeper into the kind of thoughts that we are giving this particular issue. But when we look at trade figures, as an example, the European Union has been largely the primary export market and trading partner for the African continent. When you look at the figures, the encroachment is coming from China. China is becoming a bigger player within these trade figures. The Middle East has also become much bigger. Of course, one may need to examine what are the products in question, whether it is purely the fuel, petroleum products and so forth. But the numbers show, and the decline is happening from the the Americas. So the trade figures between the African continent and the North America is declining. We are seeing the Europe trade figures also getting smaller, and the gain is coming from China. And I'm not speaking about Kenya, I'm speaking about the African continent. So these are realities that we need to start examining more critically. And perhaps after that, one will be able to redefine the kind of engagement that the rest of the world may want to have with Africa.
Mr. Bukhari, when you look at Benin, you have fairly close ties with China. You have a lot of infrastructure projects relating to the Belt and Road Initiative. Do you worry about Chinese influence? There are always concerns countries have that Chinese loans become a weapon of political influence.
So, well, first of all, we have a close tie with China, with the United States, with Russia, with the European Union, and in terms of infrastructure, China part within our infrastructure is declining since, inception of President Talon due to different reasons. But we strongly believe that for small our path to development need to be through a balanced approach. The most important thing for us is how can we create jobs for our young people coming on the labor market every year. In Africa, we are talking about 12 million young people every year ready to work. We have to create jobs for them. Otherwise, all those young people, they will go to, terrorism or immigration, to Europe. So let me just share something with you. Benin is today the largest cotton producer in Africa. We produce close to 1 million ton cotton per year. We We used to export 95% of this cotton to China, India, Vietnam, and Europe, European Union, America. They import billion of textile from China. So when people ask me question, what are you doing with China? I want to say, okay, West world, what are you doing with China? Because if you want to transform this world, come and invest in Africa, come and build factories in Africa, come and create jobs in my continent. In my past life, and I shared this with Minister Van Tonen, I used to be investment banker. And I was in charge of French automotive group in France. I saw how they move technology from Europe and build automotive market in China. Today, China is the first exporter of automotive in the world. Why Europe, Western world, cannot do the same thing with Africa? We have the market, we have the raw material, and in few countries, we have the political will today. Leaders who want to build strong economies, who want to transform their continent, who want to create jobs for their kids. So I think the question is, are we dependent on China or not? We, especially in Benin, but I strongly believe that this is the same for many African countries. We look at our interests. President Stubb said values, interests, and the third one is power. We know that we don't have power today. We have values, and we need to follow our interests. So sometimes values and interests can be in shock, you know. But at the end of the day, what is important for us is how can we transform our continent? How can we build value chain in our continent? How can we create jobs for our young people? And my colleague rightly said, when we are discussing with China today, 20 years back, China approach in Africa was completely different. They came, they give money, they said, okay, this money is a cheaper money, we give it to you at 2% interest rate. On 20 years, when they finish to build the road, you will discover that actually you pay double of the price. It's a reality. But China changed completely his approach today in Africa. They want to invest more. They want to bring manufacturing. They want to process raw material. And my message for Western world today is your best ally in the new world, because all of us, we are very, it's important for us multilateralism, but you have to acknowledge that unfortunately, we are moving to tripolarism with the view of the new administration in United States. They strongly believe that countries with big military powers should be the one ruling the world. And we in Africa, we in Benin, we strongly believe that Africa is the best ally of Europe, of European Union. But for this alliance to work, we have to focus on what makes sense for us. And for us today, the most important thing is development. How can we transform our continent? How can we build strong economies? How can we create jobs? How can we bring technology? How can we ensure that tomorrow our critical minerals will not be just extracted? Ensure that we can provide textile and provide, clothes for all Finnish or all European from Africa. Because at the end of the day, the question, we personally in Benin, we don't believe in aid. That's one of the reasons why United States, they decided to close USAID and all those stuff. We said no problem. We won't trade. If you decided to close aid, but we can trade on a fair basis, it's enough for us. Because if I'm asking you to build a 10-kilometer road for me, 10 years, in 10 years, I will come back to you to give me money to refurbish this road. But if you come and you build a factory in my country, this company will pay tax. The employees in this company, they will pay tax. And with this money, I can build my road, I can maintain my road for long life. So what we need today is more trade, more investment in our continent. And I think this investment, if it comes from China, India, United States, or Europe, we are ready to accept it. It's not a question of being a political power. We just need to solve our problem, to respond to the interest of our population.
For Mr. Valtonen, what is the EU's agenda with regard to Africa and developing countries in general?
Well, you see, I think the policy, the Africa policy of the European Union will be a question of fate more for Europe than for Africa. And precisely for those reasons that Şengün pointed out in his very good remarks. Well, first of all, because Africa obviously has options. So either we participate or we don't. And I do think that very much is based on exactly trade and investment and partnerships which are really based on, looking eye to eye against each other and doing things together. So actually what we have talked about as well, because of our backgrounds, is how to essentially lower the threshold for investors from Europe, but private investors to participate in the market. We could take a little bit away from the risk, say with government participation for some time, making some bridge solutions, and at the end of the day you would have full, transparent, market-based financial solutions, which would very much support the economy and the local people in that specific African country, and which would also help in basically building the most important building blocks of functioning economy and society, starting institutions of the rule of law, like my Kenyan colleague also pointed out how important it is that you're essentially able to ensure that you have full property rights for the investors, because then nothing will basically hinder anybody from investing. But at the end of the day, I think it's very much about the fact that Africans themselves gain ownership in what they are doing, because of course, Africans can be capitalists too, right? So with the development, you would need to be able to also secure your own, basically wealth, whatever you have been creating, and that will benefit the entire society. And I guess, the market economy, which has made Finland and Europe and the United States as prosperous as it has, is not a secret recipe. And at the same time, I do fully understand that, for instance, China is, of course, very active in this regard. And what comes to the growth of trade between Africa and the different continents, I wouldn't be surprised at all that that the trade towards China is growing. Well, obviously, China has been prospering in the past decade massively compared to Europe. Europe has remained more or less stalled, looking at the overall economy. China in the same period has grown by some 40% at least. Middle East the same. So we really have to be starting to come up with really innovative solutions as well to catch up. But to close this, I think, again, Europe and Africa are destined to work together. And I do hope that we will be able to found this better on mutual partnerships also going forward. Because also the way that China has, for instance, has gained such a foothold in Africa is not so much through aid, but really through making all sorts of financial agreements. Many of those are not really the transparent market economy I was talking about, but something else with severe strings attached as well. But at the same time, really making investment where you have to be also, committing yourself and so on and so forth. So I think that's the recipe. And finally, since there was this topic on Russia in Africa as well, I will close off with that. Russia is extremely good at spoiling things. Like was pointed out, they don't have a long-term strategy of either values or something that they want to be building, but they are very good at gaining control through destruction. We do see that in Sahel, where I was happy to visit the region some months ago. We do see that in eastern parts of Europe, in the neighborhood of the European Union, where the main interest of Russia is just to basically spoil the dreams of the people, spoil the possibility of people to gain true independence, live in liberty, and build a sustainable democracy. And the same strategy actually it's the same in Africa. And also, Russia wouldn't be sad at all if all of this policy, for instance, in Africa, led to massive outflow of people towards Europe, and the same in the Middle East, of course, what they are or have been traditionally after. Thank you so much.
Well, that has been a fascinating tour of the world with some of its leading experts and practitioners. I thank you all, foreign ministers, for a very, very rich and interesting conversation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And since last time I incorrectly told you to sit in your seats when there was in fact a break,